just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
You're tuned into the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. Joe DeLeone, Ryan Roberts, and we've got major news that we're going to be discussing here. One of the more significant names for the 2023 NFL Draft, as we've been reacting to some of the declarations that have happened so far. But Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson, who there was speculation of him returning because of his rawness. There was a possibility of him declaring for this draft class because of his talent. Nonetheless, he is entering the 2023 NFL Draft. And Ryan, this is very significant news with a quarterback class that is a little shaky after the likes of C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. Your initial thoughts on this decision by Richardson to jump into this class?
There's been a lot of debate over Richardson, Joe. I've seen people say he's going to go back to school. I've seen people say he's going to enter the transfer portal. And then what I actually have been saying for a couple of weeks is that I think he's going to enter the draft. And that's kind of been the talk behind the scenes for a lot of people, especially closely associated with like the Florida media side of things. But I think what we're looking at, man, is a guy that is betting on his talent and is going to take an opportunity to take advantage of a quarterback draft that significantly drops off after 2, but from a NFL perspective, we know that there's 3 quarterbacks that the NFL likes, and there is a clear opening at worst for me for Anthony Richardson to be quarterback 4 in this class. And if he is quarterback 4, it's probably a first-round pick. And the good thing about it is if he is the 3rd or 4th quarterback off the board, probably means he's going into a better situation, right? And I think situation is going to be so big for the kid, because we'll talk about, obviously, the excitement around an Anthony Richardson, the talent level. There's a lot of great things to clamor to. There's also a lot of things to worry about, though, right?
Yes.
So I think situation is going to matter so much. And I think he's trying to capitalize on a quarterback board that tapers off after the first couple. And he's going to have an opportunity to, I think, get drafted to a good franchise potentially.
When we had that first amazing game that he played against Utah, the debate that we threw out there was that Richardson is talented enough to be considered to be the first overall pick in this class, the first quarterback selected. He had some struggles throughout the season, but his best games still lived up to that expectation and that capability. The inconsistency is what comes into play here for this conversation and what a lot of people are going to discuss. And I want to discuss how he matches up with a specific guy in a second. But the main thing here is far and away his talent level based on his size, his speed, his arm strength, the velocity in which he's able to the ball's able to fly out of his hand. And then on top of that, like the placement when the ball just zips out of his hand with very, it doesn't take a lot of effort for him to do some of those throws, especially that one against Texas A&M that we were both obsessed with. He has that talent, but the problem is the inconsistency is going to prevent him from being in that top 2 conversation. We then now enter this debate. Is this a first round pick? And I think we both agree that he is a first round pick. If a team's willing to take a flyer on some other guys in the past, I think Anthony Richardson is somebody that you take a flyer on, you let him develop, and then you see how things turn out.
I mean, Joe, let's not be cute about this, right? Anthony Richardson, the moment he steps foot on an NFL field, is going to be one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the NFL as far as pure talent is advised, right? He's 6'4", 235, 240 pounds, rocket arm, incredibly quick release, and he's a tremendous athlete. Like, this is a 4.5 something type of athlete playing the position. So when you add all those things together, a team's going to take a gamble in the first round. I know we had that internal debate last year over Malik Willis. Hey, man, this kid is 4 inches taller than Malik Willis, 20 pounds heavier than Malik Willis, and a better athlete and a stronger arm. Like, this kid is raw, certainly, but he has elite traits at the position that everyone's trying to compare Will Levis to Josh Allen. Well, I would fight back and say Anthony Richardson might be closer to a Josh Allen than a Will Levis is, right? So I think there's almost no chance unless there is some major character flaw that we don't know about, right? Or there's an injury or something leading up to the draft. I don't think there's much of a chance that he falls out of round 1, because I think those traits and the upside that he has is going to be too tantalizing for teams to pass up on. I really do.
Right. So that debate, to wrap up today's show, the thing I want to discuss is, where does he stack up with Will Levis? I think Hendon Hooker, as we've talked about, has a very detrimental aspect of his evaluation, which is the injury. And it's going to kind of push him on the outside of this 3-4 debate with Will Levis from Kentucky and Anthony Richardson. And frankly, because Will Levis stayed stagnant, and I would argue maybe even took a slight step back, he's got the traits. But the thing that if we're comparing Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, they both are traitsy players. The difference between the two is that Anthony Richardson has actualized it more than Will Levis has in their times as starting quarterbacks. But the biggest thing is that Anthony Richardson's best we have seen significantly more of, and it is truly dominant, potentially, some might argue, unstoppable. If you can get to that best that Anthony Richardson is capable of producing. I didn't get any of that shit from Will Levis, man. Will Levis was very frustrating to watch this year. I had high hopes and expectations for him, but if we're going to have that debate and that argument of like, oh, Will Levis is so traitsy, he might be the first quarterback taken, I think Anthony Richardson is more deserving of being that guy than Will Levis is.
Well, and these guys are going to be compared throughout the rest of time as long as they're in the NFL, right? Because these are the two traitsy quarterbacks that are underdeveloped and a little bit volatile right now that are coming to the NFL. And can they fulfill their upside? Can they be that type of guy? If you're asking me which one I prefer, Joe, and this is no shot to Will Levis, because I actually think Will Levis is very talented as well. I just watched a couple games of him the other day. I think there's stuff there to work with, right? But as of right now, I would not touch Will Levis in the first round. I wouldn't. Day 2 pick, no. Sure. Gamble on the traits, I'm there with that. Anthony Richardson, I put on Twitter maybe like last week or so, I would take a chance on this kid and then figure it out. I mean, as a scouting department, you're going to have supreme trust in the coaching staff that you have to optimize and to accentuate his strengths. No doubt about it. But I still am a believer that those type of elite traits are the ones that you bet on. Will Levis has really good traits himself. He is bordering on elite traits in some capacities. But Anthony Richardson's, for me, are more elites of traits, and I would just gamble more on him. So I think if I was making the pick, after you have Bryce Young and CJ Stroud off the board, with everything we know, with Hendon Hooker injured and a little bit of an older prospect, with Will Levis's inconsistencies and him also being a 24-year-old rookie, I believe right now that I would draft Anthony Richardson as the third quarterback in this draft. I do believe that because I think the upside is substantial, and I think it warrants that type of value for him.
Yes. Yeah, there's no disagreement here. I think that people should not overthink this. And look, frankly, to me, and this is such a pretentious thing to say, but for those that disagree with that take are the ones that haven't watched the film. I'm just going to sit here and say that because if you put on both films, one is way more exciting than the other.
Oh, it's definitely more exciting. This is my thing with Will Levis, man. He's got a really strong arm, really quick release. When he's on time and processes well, the ball comes out well, and it's pretty accurate. It's just, I don't think he sees the game incredibly well. And I think you could argue the same thing with Anthony Richardson. The difference is that Anthony Richardson has had a lot less passes on the college level than Will Levis. He's had a lot less experience. I know they're both, only in their second year of playing time, right? Technically, but
one's Richardson's like 21 and Will Levis is 24.
Sure. And even from a live game rep perspective, Will Levis started every game last year. He started every game this year that he's been healthy for. Richardson has started this season, but last year he only had one start, and that was they threw him to the Wolves last year in his lone start, right? So I think that you're looking at two guys that have different levels of experience. I think that Anthony Richardson's one of the guys for me that's like Trey Lance, right? Like Trey Lance coming out. And unfortunately, Trey Lance got hurt. But I think that Anthony Richardson, like Trey Lance, are guys that need to play, right? Like they need more live bullets. They need more opportunities. I think that that's what's lacking in their development as far as how they see the game. That's what I see with Anthony Richardson. Will Levis, I just think that he doesn't see the game very well just in general right now. I don't know if it's fixable. If it is fixable, then you have a really good quarterback at the next level. But I also think that it's closer that he is a Jake Locker or a Zach Wilson than he is a Josh Allen, though. That is my main drawback with Will Levis.
And we will obviously be debating the shit out of this during the draft process at Joe DeLeone, at Ryan Roberts, or Ryzen Draft, rather. Make sure you check out Bet Online, though, which is presented by today's video. Bet Online, all the latest odds, numbers, anything that you need for sports betting. It is the best resource. It's where I go to for my go-to, betonline.ag. And if you use code BELIEVE, You'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So make sure you head on over to Bet Online. Maybe you can place that bet on who you think is going to get selected first, Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. Thank you, folks. We'll be back with more.